Okay, welcome, Johan, and welcome to everybody who's attending. And please go ahead, Johan. I hope we can run right through the session this time without interruptions.
Well, same here. Like I say, I'll skip a bit faster unless somebody is here that wasn't here last time. But about the human eye, how we see what we see to see better. Now the construction, it is a camera type device with a lens in the front that focus on an image plane, your retina. The retina is light sensitive. Your focusing is done, is a whole system of focusing. Your cornea, the iris, the opening of the lens itself, and the muscles that control the lens. When your muscles is in a relaxed state, the lens is flattened, meaning it focuses far. That's why, and then when the muscles contract, it thickens the lens to focus near, and that is where people, when they are in our age group, start getting problems. Your lens hardens with age, the muscles get weaker, and you can't thicken this lens to focus near. That's where your arms get too short and the reading glasses start getting, but you can still see quite good at distance. And area of best definition is your central area, the fovea, which is only 2 degrees wide, where you have your best, I would call vision. The retina itself is, I think it is designed wrong, because the cells that is light sensitive sits at the back against the outer shell. And in the front is all your nerve endings and blood vessels that goes through to your retina, is all running past the front of your retina. Why it is done like that, I don't know, but this is, we just have to accept it. The fact that there are things running in front of your retina that does interfere with your vision basically only comes into play when we use it like we use it in a telescope. When there's a very thin beam of light that comes from a star that's focused on your retina, it could fall on one of those vessels, or small areas illuminated, and you can actually see the pattern of your retina sometimes, which is one of the things that happened when, who's this guy that saw canals on Mars? He tried to enlarge the thing such that he turned his telescope into a test for his retina. So the canals that he saw, one of the theories is that that was the blood vessels and nerve endings on his retina. Us vertebrates that's got a skeleton, eyes is normally like that. Your invertebrates, the eye is different. The light sensitive part is in the front, and the blood and vessel and nerve endings runs behind. I would rather be an invertebrate than an invertebrate, but I think their eyes is designed better according to me. This is how the eye is constructed. Now, in your retina, you've got 2 types of detectors. Scotoscopic detectors, meaning detecting color, which is done No. Scotoscopic is your darkness detectors. It detects in very low light done by your rod cells, of which there's approximately 90 million spread over your retina. It's got discs that's filled with a visual purple pigment, rhodopsin, which is a protein, and it's an amino sequence called opsin and an organic chromophore called retinol, vitamin A. So you need vitamin A to be able to produce this rhodopsin to increase your sensitivity to very low light levels. And these are sitting, the highest density of that is about 20 degrees off the central axis of your eye, is densely populated with these rods. And they are so sensitive that they can detect 1 photon of light. The next type of cell, your cone cells, photoscopic detectors, that is detecting colored lights. You've got retinol, which link to specific proteins in these cone cells, which makes it sensitive to a range of wavelengths, long, medium, and short cones. And they sensitive to a wavelength around this area. Their diameter is 0.5 to 4 micrometers, and they most dense in your central fovea, that central 2 degrees area where you have your best visual acuity in color. So we've got trichromatic color vision, if you now want to be fancy with it. Now, the sensitivity curves of all these detectors. Your rods is running like that. It peaks around about 498 in the blue-green part of the spectrum. That's where it is the most sensitive. But they do not detect color. Your brain doesn't interpret them as color. Your rods are the only ones that is sensitive to the intensity or the brightness of light. And they're 600 times more sensitive than your cones. The cones, which is the blue one, not very sensitive. The green one is the most sensitive, and it peaks rather close to the rods. That is why everybody believes, and it is a fact, your eye is the most sensitive to green. Red is not that much and doesn't overlap that much with your green, and it hardly overlaps with your rods. So your eye, and with a longer wavelength, your eye does, that's why the people lean towards red lights to preserve your night vision. But at night, you want to optimize it so that you basically only use your rods. And that's what the rest of the talk is about, how to optimize your eye for that so that you can see the best and the most at night. So your color perception, your eye sends only 3 kinds of signals to your brain: long, short, and medium wavelengths, and your brain constructs the full spectrum. That's why no 2 people actually see the same color. And people do have disagreements about what color is seen. And then against what background? These 2 gray areas is exactly the same brightness or the same hue, but it looks different because of the different backgrounds. The same with the greens. So things like that does affect your interpretation of what you can see. Again, here, there is no dark line on that border, but because of those 2 bright colors, your eye interprets that as a dark line. Same with here, that part and that part is the same brightness all over. Same with those blues. they're the same color, but if you've got this bright things in the middle, they do look different. So that's why people, but we're not really interested in seeing nicely colored pictures. We want to see in the dark. But how can we see very well in the day in color when we've only got the best vision of 2 degrees in the middle of my eye, of my retina? So your eye does involuntary movements. So that small area, that 2 degrees, it actually scans a scene through that, and it builds up the picture without you knowing about it. And they are important, very important. Your saccades at about 4 hertz and microsaccades to scan that fovea through a scene, or with your head movement, or following it, which is not that accurate, but you follow a thing as it moves, and the response to movement, and vergence and accommodation, the opening and closing of your pupil, and the compressing and relaxing of your lens to focus. So that's how you see normal vision. You scan an area through the best part of your retina to build up a nicely colorful scene. And if you compare the eye as a camera, bright scenes got 120 degrees field of view, a 576 megapixel camera of an ISO 1, and it can pick up contrast 10,000 to 1 on static scenes 100 to 1 with an f22 focal ratio. Your pupil is closed up, so you can get the reasonably sharp focus, very sensitive, and with your eye, you can see things in the shade as well as in bright sunlight at the same time, because it has got this very high contrast ratio. And then scotopic vision in low light, it changes to an ISO 800 camera. So it gets vastly more sensitive, and your contrast ratio goes up to 1,000,000 to 1 at an F ratio of 3.5, because your pupil opens up quite wide, which makes focusing a bit more difficult, but you can pick up very faint objects if you have low light vision. Now, how do we achieve this? We're interested in achieving this. How do we achieve it? You must improve the contrast of the scene. Meaning the only way you can increase the contrast is by decreasing the sky background, making it darker. So either darker skies and sufficient magnification. Now this is a rule of thumb. Now this talk is basically in 2 parts. The next part is how to use your eye with a telescope properly. But you would magnify, if you've got a 200 millimeter, 8-inch telescope, you would magnify between 1/4 of the mirror diameter 50 times to half the, so between 50 and 100 times magnification on an 8-inch mirror, you will have decreased the darkness, the brightness of the sky background sufficiently to make your target stand out better. Now, properly baffle your telescope. That is when, this is a mechanical thing, you look into the focuser with the eyepiece removed, and you should only see your optics and darkness. You shouldn't see anything else being illuminated. So that's when you look and see what you are seeing, and you try and make plans to fix it. Eat healthy with sufficient vitamin A. Now, don't go to the chemist and buy vitamin A supplement. Your body needs it to create rhodopsin, but you can get too much of it, and too much of it is poisonous. It is not good for you. One of the side effects is that it dries your eyes and it actually makes your eyesight worse. So eat healthy, eat normal foods that contain vitamin A. Don't pump yourself full of artificial vitamins. And do not do as I do, do as I say. Do not smoke or drink. Give yourself about 2 hours to dark adapt properly. And in the day before a dark observing evening, avoid bleaching your eyes by avoiding direct sunlight for a day or two beforehand. And block all stray light from your observing site. Even if you hang or put up a shade to block street lights or your neighbor's security lights away from your telescope, that you cannot see any other light sources apart from what you are looking at in the sky. And then avoid momentary lights. Do not just be tempted to switch on your torch just to find something, because that momentary lights will put you back 1 to 2 hours to dark adapt again, even if it is on just momentarily. Put a black cloth over your head when at the eyes. You look silly, but it achieves the definitely to block that stray light from your eyepiece. And memorize as much as possible. You don't have to read charts or books during the evening. And practice with your telescope that you can operate it with your eyes closed. And you don't need to switch on your torch unnecessarily. And then when you're at the eyepiece, keep both eyes open, because you'll be in the dark, no extraneous light. The eye that is not receiving information is relaxed. The other one that's looking through the eyepiece, it just makes your eye focus on the eyepiece more comfortable. Otherwise, having one eye closed, receiving absolutely nothing, causes an imbalance, and the eye that you are using as eyepiece does get much more tired than what you really want. So even if you're scared that the other eye that you're not using is going to bother you, just hold your hand in front of it, but keep both eyes open. You can try it. It makes a hell of a difference. And your rods integrate for up to 15 seconds. So take your time. Do not just look into the eyepiece and say, no, I don't see anything, or I see. Look for at least 15 to 20 seconds to make sure that everything, all the information that is there is picked up by the rods in your eye. And then something that everybody hears about, use averted vision. Now, that bothered me, because where the hell do you look to do averted vision? We need to look again at how your eye is made. All these nerve endings and blood vessels go out of your eye in a spot just to the side of your nose. And just, well, if you look at the eye now from the top, just to the right of the area of highest sensitivity. Now, that spot is creating a blind spot. And as you can see, it's close to 20 degrees off axis. That is in the area where you are have the most density of your rods, that is the most sensitive to light. So this blind spot, you can actually interfere with your vision if you are not careful. And That's the sensitivity curve. Because you see the blind spot sits in the most sensitive part of your rods and where they are at their most dense. So the blind spot sits towards your nose in any of the eye. But because this is a single lens system, it actually inverts the image. So you would think that you would look there and it would image there to avoid the blind spot. But this lens, if you look there towards your nose area, it will invert the image and you will find your blind spot. So if you want to use averted vision, remember this. If you are right-eyed, look to the top of the object that you want to see and look slightly away from your nose. If you left-eyed, again, look to the top and to the left. So right-eyed, top, right. Left-eyed, top, right. About halfway through, and a 60-degree apparent field of view is about average for a decent eyepiece. About halfway to the edge. Look in that area, but keep in mind that, but then this object will fall on the most sensitive part of your retina where most of the rods are situated. If you left-eyed, top and left. That's the simple rule. Now, if you don't believe, you can actually see that you have a blind spot in your eye. How can you see it? It's about 12 to 15 degrees towards the nose, 1.5 degree below horizontal, roughly 7.5 degrees by 5.5. So it's actually quite large. So, it's quite easy to have that interfere if you do the averted vision thing wrong. So make yourself a little piece of paper like that, write on it an R and an L. And this is about 2 to 3 inches apart. Doesn't matter the exact distance. And start off close, hold the right in front of your right eye so that the left, the L, is towards your temple away, and concentrate just on the R. Bring this paper close to your eye, concentrate on the R. Don't try and look at that. And then as you move it away, at some point, you will notice that this L just disappears. It is not there. And then as you move it further away, it will reappear again. That's when it has focused on your blind spot. Same with when you look using your left eye, hold this in front of your left eye, and that's to the left of that eye. Move it forward, concentrate to just look at that. Don't scan your eyes left and right, and you will see your blind spot as well. So this is a little experiment that you can do to actually convince yourself that you do have a blind spot in the eye, and you've got to do your averted vision right to avoid putting the thing that you are concentrating on exactly on your blind spot. Because if you do this, and you will see how effectively the other target disappears, you will realize that this is a definite possibility. And then we come to the internal fight about torches at night. Very simple. My belief is color, any color. It is too bright if you can see the color. Red has got a wider, is more forgiving because your rods are very insensitive to red. But if you use red light, the focus of your eyes is difficult to focus. So if you have to use a red light, don't be too proud. Use a magnifying glass to actually read, or some reasonably strong reading glasses, even if you don't need reading glasses under normal circumstances. Use optical aid to actually read so that your red light is as dim as possible. Because the fact that you can see the red light means it is already too bright. The other one is having a green torch, which is totally against everything that everybody hears. Because that frequency sits in the part of the spectrum where your eyes is the most sensitive, it makes focusing on this, and this is very important, dim, very dim. You must not be able to see that you have got a green torch. It must just be a gray glow that you see on your paper or whatever you're looking at. Especially if you're having a green type torch, green, blue type torch. Dim, you must not be able to see color, because if you see color here, you know it has affected your rods. The red one is not as affecting it as much, so you can have a slightly brighter red dot, a red torch, and it's an eternal debate. What color? My personal view is red, slightly brighter, but as dim as possible. Use optical aid to be able to read. Or any other color, very much dimmer. You must not be able to detect color. And then laser pointers, our favorite one. Avoid that at serious events. Your worst possible color for torches, blue, green, or cyan, but it's the best when they're very dim. You must not be able to perceive color. And then you can discuss this and experiment with this and have great arguments about the advantages or disadvantages of your torches and other people's torches. But keep it in mind, red, use optical aid. Any other color, very, and I can't stress much, very dim. And other things to watch out for: attentional rubbernecking. When people see violent or erotic images, they fail to process whatever they see next. This violent images normally happens when somebody misuses his torch close to my telescope. Then nobody sees anything for the next few minutes. Noise. The parts of the brain that handle visual input are less effective when the mind is also processing audio input. Even though you must think your music is good, do not bring it close to me when I'm observing. And then when you want to estimate magnitudes, keep in mind that dim red stars appear substantially fainter than dim white stars. So if you want to compare stars in magnitude, defocus slightly so that you compare disks and not points. And then the last two slides, how to make enemies at the star party. And this blue-green torch is definitely not on. You are definitely an enemy. But even a red torch is not safe, because it happens a lot of times. Then I'm busy at my telescope doing something that requires dark adaptation, and my friend comes walking up with his red torch on his forehead, looking me straight in the eye, asking me questions. So be careful when you use a red torch. Do not look at somebody. If you have to use a red torch to walk around, hold it in your hand as low as possible and shine it on the ground. so that it does not shine in somebody's eyes. So if you walk up to me with a red torch on your head, you are going to find this red torch very far from you very soon, because this is what it looks like from my side if somebody walks up to me with his red torch in his hand. And this is the end of the show. Any questions or comments?
Johan, you obviously feel very strongly about dark adaptation. The numbers that you quote is up to 2 hours to achieve dark adaptation.
Yes.
I've heard 20 to 30 minutes in the past, so this is quite new. But you obviously feel very strongly about dark adaptation.
Yes,
Any
because
comments?
if you want to make the most of what you see in that scene, you want, and okay, after half an hour, you've achieved most of your dark adaptation. But that last little bit that will bring out this extra magnitude at night is achieved after only 2 hours. And just a flash of light close to you puts you back on that 2 hours, and you've got to go through this 20 to 30 or half an hour again to achieve reasonably good dark adaptation.
Thanks, Johan. That was very, very interesting. Interesting to hear all this, the stats of what how the eye compares to a camera at f3 and f22 or whatever, and all those things. Wish I could make a camera as good as the human eye.
So the main things that I want people to take away is how to properly use your averted vision. Right eye, look up and to the right. Left eye, look up and to the left. That already will gain you at least a magnitude or two when you're looking at the scene in your eyepiece.
Yeah, Johan, I tried when you had that left and right piece strip of paper up. I tried moving my eye closer and further and the left and the right, and I didn't really see a blind spot. So I don't know. How do you tell if you're left or right-eyed? Actually, what I didn't
Doesn't matter.
I didn't know
Both
there was
your
such a
eyes-
thing as being left or right-eyed.
Well, you've got a dominant eye.
I think probably
Because
my right eye. I normally use my right eye to look through a telescope. So yeah.
Yeah, it's relatively easy to find your dominant eye is if you hold your hand at arm's length with your thumb up, both eyes open on something that's a reasonable distance away.
Yeah.
Then you close one of your eyes. Doesn't matter which one. Because if you close one eye and the target and your thumb moves off whatever you're looking at, then you've closed your dominant eye.
Yeah, that doesn't help me because one's equal distance on either side of the thing I'm looking at. Maybe I'm ambi-eye, like you get ambidextrous.
Well, it is quite possible.
Well, stereoscopic, yeah.
Well, it is not impossible. Normally, everybody has a dominant eye that you, number one, you feel most comfortable using it. And secondly, well, in target shooting, that becomes very important, knowing your dominant eye. But if you use this R and L trick, close the eye that you are not testing. Do not have both of them open. Have the R in front of your right eye and only look at the R, but force yourself not to look at the L.
Okay, I'll try that. Yeah, I'll try that.
And the same with the left eye. Hold it with the L in front of your left eye, so the R will be to the left. Close your right eye. You're only testing the left eye.
Okay, that's
moment
why it didn't work, because I had both eyes open.
Yeah, no, because the other eye falls in that blind spot,
Okay,
which is rather difficult if you're looking through a telescope eyepiece.
yeah. Anybody else got questions for Johan? Mick,
I
David,
have,
go ahead.
thank you. I've just forgotten, why does the eye take a long time to tune in? Will that improve with practice? Or is it biological with the brain?
Well, that's the chemical reaction, because the light breaks down that rhodopsin that is creating the sensitivity to very low light levels. And then you need the darkness for that to
Build up.
build up again.
So it's a slow speed
Yeah,
adjustment.
no, it's not an
It's a chemical
instantaneous
build-up for a biological process, absolutely.
Yeah, it's not an instantaneous process. So your eye takes time to dark adapt, but it doesn't take any time to undark adapt. So that is the main thing. Like I say, avoid lights, looking at lights, but anyway, I think maybe because the next talk is, if you still feel like something, how to use your telescope optimally. Anybody up for this?
A good start, yes. Thank you, thank you.
You want to go ahead with that? Then it sounds quite interesting. If
Well,
everybody's still got a few minutes of time, have you got it prepared?
Yeah, it's still shared.
We can see it. Yeah, we can see your slide.
Okay, so we can start. How to use your telescope optimally. Purpose of a telescope. Let me just get my nice pointer up again. The purpose is to collect light from a distance and focus an image of that object on a retina photo or CCD camera with as little distortions as possible. Now that little distortion bit is what drives telescope optical design and development. This is not what this talk is about. It is how to focus a good object on your retina. This is the main reason for this talk. Now, just to come back, how do we see when we look through a lens? A magnifying glass and a little bug. Now, from every point on this bug, light will spread out, hits the lens, and the lens will focus it. And depending on the relative distances between your eye and this lens, for your eye, it will look as if the light from that area comes from there. And from this eye, it will look that the light from this area comes from here. So for your eye, this little bug is very big under a magnifying glass. This is the very basic, stupid way how a magnifying glass makes you see small things bigger. Right focal distance and your eye at the right position, and you will magnify things. With a telescope, you will have two lenses, your objective lens, which looks at your object, and your eyepiece lens that projects things into your eye. So this objective lens will focus an image of this little tree turned around at its focal distance. Through this magnifying glass, which is your eyepiece, it will look as if the tip of the tree comes from there, and you will see a magnified image through your eyepiece of this real image that hangs in the sky or in the tube created by your objective lens. And that is how magnifying glass and a telescope works. And if you look up at the moon, you will see it's 1/2 degree in size. If you look at your eye that's got a focal length of about 25 millimeter, you will look at this 1/2 degree moon, and it will actually make a 1/2 degree image on your retina. And on this distance, that image is going to be 0.2 millimeters in size. If you have a telescope lens with a focal length of 1,000 millimeters, at 1,000 millimeters, that half a degree moon will now be 8 millimeters in size. It is 40 times larger as what it is in your eye. So that's basically where magnification in the telescope comes from, is from this bigger image caused by the long focal length of your objective. So your magnification, primary magnification, is determined by your focal distance. You examine the image with an eyepiece, with a magnifier, fancy magnifying glass. And the total magnification of a system is the focal length of your objective divided by the focal length of your eyepiece. So 1,000 millimeter objective and the 25 millimeter eyepiece, 1,000 is 40. Exactly the same as before, where before we did it by comparing the angular sizes. Here we're using the focal lengths of the different lenses being used. So that's telescope magnification. Other things is power, resolution, and collecting power. Collecting power is related to the square of your diameter. It's relating to the area of your mirror. Bigger the area, the more light is collected. And then the resolution is something that people very seldom understand. That's the smallest angle that can be resolved. And that is related to the frequency that you're looking at, inversely to the diameter that you are looking through. So as an example, yellow light with a wavelength of 580 nanometers, and you want a 0.1 arcsecond resolution. So the smallest thing you want to see is 0.1 arcsecond wide. You need a mirror of 1.2 meters. The diameter. That will have a resolution of 0.1 arcsecond. Now, as a matter of interest, how big is an arcsecond? That's the width of a golf ball at 10 kilometers.
Oh,
So if you want to see 1/10 of a golf ball at 10 kilometers, you need a mirror of 1.2 meters. That's if the atmosphere and everything is perfect. But we're not going to get into the atmosphere now. Radio telescopes have a longer wavelength, so the resolution is lower because that number is bigger. So a 1.2 meter radio telescope observing at a 27 or 21 centimeter wavelength, so 1.2 meters, 21 centimeters, that resolution is 14.8 degrees, 30 times the size of the sun in the sky. So a 1.2 meter radio telescope is if you look at it at the sky, you will see anywhere in about a 15-degree circle, there is a signal, but you can't pinpoint in that area where that signal is. So 100-meter diameter radio telescope at 10 centimeter wavelength has the individual resolving ability of an optical mirror of about 5 millimeters. Why is this important? That is the opening of your, like a normal old person like us, the pupil opening. So a 100-meter radio telescope at 10 centimeter wavelengths see as good as you. It has the resolving capability as the human eye. But that's just interesting facts. Aperture, and like your eye, 5 millimeter pupil, it's got an area of nearly 20 square millimeters. A 6-inch lens, 150, has got an area of nearly 18,000 square millimeters. It gathers 900 times more light than your eye. And that is the most important characteristics of the telescope. Nothing else matters. Light gathering is what is the king. Now, the angular resolution, you can roughly estimate that with the formulas. In the visual range, it's 120 divided by the diameter of your optical device, your eye or a lens. 120 divided by 5 give you 24 arc seconds. So I say the eye is roughly about 30 arc seconds. So in theory, if you put 30 golf balls at 10 kilometers next to each other, you should, in perfect conditions, just be able to see a little dot. A 6-inch lens, 120 divided by 150 is 0.8 arc seconds, about 1 arc second. So your telescope has got 30.6 times better resolution. So that's where the question comes in. How far can you see with a telescope? And this is what causes that, because you can resolve smaller things at a larger distance. And the light, if the thing is bright enough, you will be able to see it with a telescope. So maybe you can now answer this question: how far can this telescope see, when you get this question? But a formula that I think is much more important is your exit pupil. That's the small diameter beam of light that exits your eyepiece. And the formula for that is exit pupil is the diameter of your main objective, your main mirror or lens, divided by the magnification of the system, or eyepiece focal length divided by the F ratio of the telescope. And this is a very easy to remember that you can quickly, you know what F ratio is your telescope, and you look at the eyepiece focal length and you can quickly see what exit pupil you will get out of this eyepiece. Why? That is the most important factor in the comfort of viewing, because the size of this beam of light determines how comfortable you will look at things. And to put all this together, I have made a spreadsheet. I'll just get to, okay. Why don't you want to open now? But that's not too big a problem. I open it from here. Okay. This spreadsheet is available on the ASSA Pretoria website, if anybody wants to play with it. It has a few fields that you can fill in or choose. Like, do you use a Barlow length? Yes or no? What is the strength of your Barlow? What is the diameter of your objective? In this case, I've decided on a 6-inch. And F ratio is an F8. That means it has an effective focal length of 1,200 millimeters. Then you will have magnification guidelines here. Your recommended lowest magnification you would like out of this, with an exit pupil of 5 millimeters. A recommended eyepiece would be a 40 millimeter eyepiece. You can push it lower with a 56, but a 56 millimeter eyepiece is not a common eyepiece. So at the ends, you might get theoretical numbers that doesn't mean anything, or you can't get it. But if you work in this area between 5 and 1 millimeter exit pupils, you will get the corresponding magnification you will get. And then there's a few things. Recommended lowest, best visual acuity. What that means is that the resolving capability of the telescope exactly matches the resolving capability of your eye. So in this case, with a 32 millimeter eyepiece, you will see the best, sharpest image, because whatever the telescope can resolve, it can give to your eye. Wide views, and then a very important one, every telescope has got a sweet spot. The magnification in this case is half the diameter. Remember in this previous one, I said you magnify between 1/4 and 1/2. So that is about there to there. And that's in the area that you will use this telescope the most. Best visual to the sweet spot. And then you can do the higher magnification as well. And then to dim the sky background while viewing extended nebulosity without sacrificing too much field of view calls for an exit pupil of 4 to 5 millimeters. Nebulosity with this telescope, 40 or 32 millimeter eyepiece. Dimming the sky background completely calls for an eyepiece size yielding an exit 1 to 2 millimeters. So that's higher magnification. And in which case, this is between a 16 and an 8 millimeter, which is also your general viewing maximum, which is a magnification equal to the diameter of your mirror. So with this, you can play, and then you will find interesting things. If you change this telescope to an f5, you will see that in this case, the recommended lowest 4, 5, 20 or 25, while your 1 to 2 millimeter range is between a 5 and a 10 millimeter eyepiece.
Johan, can I ask you quickly?
Yes.
Can you just as an example, just try the telescope I was using last night, a 180 diameter
180
and f15.
F15.
Yeah, laxative Casagreen. Yeah, it's
Okay.
2700 focal. That's quite right.
Yeah, no. If this was now wrong, I would have been very, very embarrassed. Now, your sweet spot on this telescope is with a 30 millimeter eyepiece.
Okay, that's interesting.
Try it, like I say.
I was actually I imaged the Orion Nebula M42 two nights ago, and I could only get 3/4 of the nebulosity of the bright nebulosity of M42 in the whole image, in the full image.
Yeah, but like I said, this now depends, because now you can look at what
that's
is the
sorry,
angle.
that was at prime focus with the camera.
Yeah, no, but you remember, you've got your focal length, Joe, on a circle of 2,700 millimeters radius. Look up what is the angular size of the nebulosity, and work out how many millimeters wide it's going to be at this focal length. Then you will quickly see that it will overflow the edges of your sensor.
Yeah.
So
this is very interesting. I'd like to try and download this. You
Well,
say it's
it's
available
on
on the Pretoria website.
on the Pretoria ASSA website. If you don't find it, you just send me a mail and I'll mail it to you. You will see that some of these things you can't change, but if you want to play with the formulas, somewhere there's a protection that you just switch off. It's not
Yeah.
password protected or anything. I just don't want people to break it easily.
Well, I presume the formulas are correct, so it wouldn't be much point.
Yeah, no, the formulas is rather simple, but it is based on this, what the telescope can resolve and what your eye can resolve. And then relating it to the exit pupil, because the exit pupil makes it comfortable to look at. So your telescope, this Maxit Cassegrain, is not the best one to image extended objects, because you'll find that that Orion Nebula is a few degrees in size.
Yeah.
And then
I was just trying it out. Normally that telescope's ideal more for planets and so on. They say. Otherwise, you have to use a reducer to widen the field.
Yeah, but like I say, unfortunately, hereby I've only made positive Barlow lenses. I should actually put a list of negative ones there. That you have a focal reducer of -2 or minus.
Yeah.
So, but once you have that, you can actually see it. And then, if you want on this focal length, effective focal length, what is the size, and then you can work it back to what. But this is for visual. Again, if you want to go too high, for highest powers, grab an eyepiece that gives an exit pupil of 0.5 to 1 millimeter. Below 1 millimeter, it starts getting uncomfortable. Below 0.5 millimeter, it's just plain uncomfortable. So don't even try and put a 7 millimeter, which if you really want to do a close double star, you can put a 7 millimeter in there. But it's not going to be comfortable. Absolute maximum recommended 8 millimeter eyepiece. High power, low max. But definitely on your telescope, try a 30 millimeter and 60 millimeter you're going to battle to find. So this telescope is more suitable for high magnification and small objects.
Yeah, I must say when you're viewing with the eye, then it shows up, Saturn and Jupiter beautifully. It's brilliant.
That because
they're very, very clear.
With a 30 millimeter eyepiece, you're sitting at 90 magnification, which is quite a decent. Or a 20 will give you around.
I think I actually use a 20 most of the time.
And that gives you 120 to 140 times magnification. So that's this telescope's speciality. Nebulosity, not some, but it's probably very good at dense, what you call the thing, globular clusters and things like that.
Yeah.
So every type of telescope has its strengths and weaknesses. So, but like I say, this, and here you can play with interesting 250 millimeter telescope, 10-inch f5. You can see 35, 25, 10, the eyepieces are recommended for certain tasks. I changed this to a 6-inch f5. Eyepieces stay the same. So that's where this one formula of your exit pupil relating to the eyepiece focal length, certain F ratio class telescopes react the same to eyepieces. The difference between the 150 and the 250 is the effective magnification you get with that telescope, with that eyepiece.
Interesting.
So if you have an f8 and an f5 telescope or whatever, you will have you can work out the range of good telescopes, or you don't know what eyepiece to buy, you can use this for that. But anyway, then I just don't save it. And now I must get back to my here it is, a resume slideshow. Okay. Let's see if it talks to me. Do you need to use the spreadsheet all the time? No, you choose the right magnification. Your lowest magnification you want is the diameter of your main mirror divided by 5. That's the magnification. Then you can work out what eyepiece you will need. Sharpest view, diameter divided by 4, and the sweet spot. Always make sure that you have an eyepiece that matches this, because it is going to give you the sweetest view in your telescope. The diameter divided by 2. And if you want to play around, you always start there and work up and down as you wish. And your comfortable high power is a magnification equal to the diameter of your mirror. Below that, it's just starting to get uncomfortable. And again, when we had our eye with the lights and things, that spoils our what you call it, dark adaptation, telescope, local environment, while it's in use. Avoid looking over man-made structures, roofs, paving, etc. These absorb heat during the day and emit it at night. Plants also absorb heat during the day, but they use it for energy and does not emit as much at night. So you try and view over as much vegetation as possible. So choose your observing spot that you look over trees and things like that, and not over your neighbor's roof or a parking area or something like that. And this is the best excuse not to mow your lawn. You want as much vegetation as possible around your telescope. More, the sky environment, you avoid looking low on the horizon. That's basically obvious. But a very important thing, it's got 2 reasons. You must learn how to evaluate the sky conditions, so that you can determine whether your telescope is giving to you what you think it should. So you look at an area around the zenith, above your head, naked eye. See what is the faintest thing that you can see, and you look at how stable the stars are around it. So when you go out, before you start viewing, do this little exercise. Look up. The second thing is it will get you to learn the sky, because you must identify the faintest object that you can see. And you learn to see how stable the things are around it. And whatever you make a few notes and relate what you determine to weather forecast and the history of the weather. So you quickly start, well, number one, learn the sky and start to see the weather forecast was like this yesterday and the day before. So tonight, I've got a good chance of having a good sky or not. And very soon you will start making a pattern. But find a method for you, and this is the easiest method. You try and look as high as possible, and don't estimate how good a night is by looking at the horizon. So you evaluate the sky above your head, and at the same time also learn what is above your head. And then your telescope in use, allow it to cool down 30 minutes or more, depending on the type. Your Maxotov probably takes about 2 hours to cool down.
2 hours, by that time the clouds have moved in and then I can't take any photos anymore. So
No, that's because it's got some rather thick glass in it.
Yeah.
So, but at least 30 minutes. here in South Africa is not that big a problem. Overseas, it's more because there's not that great a temperature difference between inside the house and outside. Very important, make sure your mount is as stable as possible and align your finder as good as you can. It's very, very, very frustrating. You can't find anything in the sky because your finder is not, and make a plan to align your finder. I always align my finder in the day so that you can see what you're doing. Don't try and fiddle with it at night. So stable mount, a well-aligned finder. Dress appropriately for the expected temperature. Don't go out there in t-shirts and flip-flops and then have to run into the house an hour later to dress warm. Dress from the start. Dark adapt and stay dark adapted. So while the telescope cools down, you can do your final dark adaptation. And learn to operate your telescope without any lights. And avoid alcohol. Alcohol not only does make your eyesight worse, it also stuffs your temperature control up big time. So when it's cold, even though I like a little sherry or something, it's the worst thing to have to try and keep warm with. And now at last, you've aligned your telescope on a stable mount and you've found your target. Now you focus it. If your telescope has got secondary support, a secondary mirror, the simplest thing is to use your spikes to focus it properly, because you must have a nice clean image of the spikes. Even sometimes on a telescope without a secondary support, like a Maxitov, you can put a piece of like nice thick string across, and it will create a nice spike for you temporary that you can use to get your focus right. I know everybody is now going to jump up and say,
like a mini,
yeah, everyone was going to say, make a Bartinov mask. I've got great respect for Bartinov mask, but I always believe there is something simpler available. Some theory, why do you see spikes? The frequency of the right of your straight spikes is determined by the width of your support. So if you've got a that width is B. If you've got a very thick vein, you're actually going to have a very high frequency spike. So the spike will be short little dots. A very thin vein will have long, thin, sharp dots. And sometimes I actually find that a thicker vein up to a point, because it's so short, it doesn't bother you. A very thin vein gives you a very long, straight, definite spike. And around the center part of your image, that frequency of ringing again is determined by the diameter of your main mirror. So you will have diffraction rings around an object. They're not that easy to see most of the times, but they are there. On the previous image, you can just make them out there. In our telescopes, it normally looks like that. And if you look very carefully, you will see it's in there. But you've got these diffraction rings determined by the edge of your primary, and you've got your spikes determining by the width and the number of veins that you have. But you can use that to do proper focus. Or my way that I like, use a Hartmann mask. You don't need a specialized equipment like to make something that resembles a batten of mask. You take a piece of cardboard and you cut holes in it. When a star is out of focus, you will see 3 sets of holes. No sets of holes when it is in focus, and then it will grow again into 3 sets of holes as you go out of focus. Or my favorite one, you make 2 circular holes and a triangle, and you will see the 3 shapes when it is out of focus. When you get closer to focus, it will move. All of these will move together. When you go past focus, that the angle of the triangle is going to turn around. And it's going to turn around again until you get all 3 of them on top of each other. So this simple batten of mask actually works. You make it temporarily out of cardboard, you put it in front, do your focus, take it off, and store it. That's what I like to use. Now some bonus, and it's used to figure and align telescopes. Principle is collimated light shining through the mask through a lens. Past the focal point, you will see 2 dots. On the focal point, you will see 1 dot. Before the focal point, you will see exactly 2 dots again. And if this distance in front of focus and behind focus is the same, that patterns of the dots should be the same. So you can have very complicated masks and take an image on a Hartmann plate of what you get from these dots, have a theoretical good position or a practical really bad position, but that will enable you, if you've dusted off your mathematics properly, to actually draw a contour map of the surface of your mirror and work out where you need to polish more. Because in large mirrors, like this is supposed to be a 4 meter diameter mirror, you work with sub-diameter and you do aerial polishing or area polishing with it to make it perfect. And if anybody's been looking at when they aligned the James Webb mirrors, they used a similar principle to align it. So the Hartmann mask is not old information that is not being used anymore. So you can dust off your mathematics and work out whether that is a good mirror or not, if you know the specs of the mirror. But anyway, it even has uses in the real world. When you want to work out the characteristics of your optical system, you align dots with the little buttons, and it actually maps out what your eye. So if you want to need to do corrective surgery on your cornea, that's the type of test that they would do for you. But anyway, this is now the useless or the interesting but useful information. But then you discover, but I found my things, I can focus it as good as I can, but I'm still not happy with my telescope. Then unfortunately, you've got to jump into collimation, which is the optical alignment of your telescope. And everybody just faints when I say that, but accept that you will have to learn to do that, or at least check it and ask for help. Now for your Newtonian telescopes, make your own collimator with a washer and a film canister. I'm sure somebody will still have a few 35mm film canisters lying around. So take the lid off, drill a small hole, like about 2.5 to 3 well, 2.5 millimeters in the center of the cap. And this cap is so kind to actually have a dot where you need to drill. and then cut out the bottom of your canister and stick the washer inside the lid and stick the lid on, and there you have what I call the blinksig or the bright side collimator. And then you go and use it. And I advise that you do the collimation in the day so that you can see what you're doing. So you sit in the shade and point the scope at the blue sky, nowhere near the sun. Very important. And then you put your collimator in your focuser and you look in it and you see this and you say, what the hell? Because this image does not make any sense. And I step back and place some white paper behind the secondary, like so. When you look in through your collimating cap, then the image suddenly starts making a bit more sense, because this white paper makes your secondary holder stand out against the background. And in theory, you must then identify what you're looking at. The bottom edge of your focuser, which is this ring here. The outside of your secondary holder or secondary mirror. I'm also always pushing the limit. My main mirror on my telescope is exactly the same size as my secondary. So I'm using a very, very small secondary. But normally you would see some clean darkness around the image of your main mirror. And then you will see the reflection of your spider veins from the top, and you will look up the bottom of the focusing tube. That is the little washer that you've put in there. And some mirrors has got a center dot, which is there. And eventually your goal is to see this whole main mirror in the secondary and the center dot over the center of that washer. Then you know it is lined up. But this is a matter of practice, looking and seeing at what you're looking at. So you identify, you ignore the spider at first. Forget about it. You center the mirror outline. Now my mirror outline just fits inside my secondary. Mine is a bad example, but you don't want to see half of your main mirror here. You want to see your main mirror fit exactly in the middle of your secondary. That you adjust with whatever adjustments you have on your secondary. And once that is good, then only you look at the second, at this image inside the reflection of your spider and your secondary. Now, obviously, we saw that it was out. Now you want to determine in which I need to move this thing in this direction to get it to the middle, up in this direction. Now I hold my hand up in the front of the tube, or I place a ruler across. Use your finger or place something over the front. But be careful with placing things over there. It will fall onto your mirror. So I move my finger around the outside of the tube, and it shows me a direction. Now I know where my hand is touching the tube. So I would be moving my hand around the edge here with the finger sticking inside to find the direction that it is out. So, and then once I've determined it is out in this direction, I look down the bottom of the tube towards the bottom and look at the back at the adjuster. Move down the tube and find the adjuster that will do the most correction. So you adjust, look what is happening, and then you repeat this trick until you've got that thing centered as good as possible. Now you can do that as many times as you want and get as close as possible, but you must always fine tune your focus under the star. You find a bright star in the center of the field and defocus it slightly, so you will get a disk with a dark dot. If the dark dot looks like that, centered in the middle, you're done. But if the dark center is off, and this is where everybody does it wrong, they start adjusting to move, try and move this dark center into the middle. You must move the scope until you get this image center, because then you will move this part to the optical axis. Now you know you want this to move in there, and then you adjust the main mirror to move this good image to the center. Do not adjust it there. Move the scope until it is as good as it can. And then you adjust it to move. So that's where your stable mount and everything comes into play as well. And a very good helper at the back. So that you can fight with him turning the things in the wrong direction and so forth, which does happen. And then once you've achieved that with a bright star in the middle, congratulations, you are done. Now, is this all worth it? This is what a lot of us see in our telescopes. Wow, I can see the rings of Saturn. Same telescope after being collimated. Big difference. And happy learning to fiddle with your optics, and we are here to help. Just us. And this is the whole talk, and I can now stop sharing.
Many thanks, Johan. That was well worth it. I learned a lot there.
Okay, it's basically like based on Newtonians, which is telescope.
Just a quick question on going back to the eyes, the fact that human eye is most sensitive to the green frequency. I presume that's evolution because the sun's maximum emission is in the green frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then I presume that's also hearing about the radio wave resolution. You need a 100-meter wave. I presume that's why we can't see radio waves.
No, that is definitely. But like I say, you will need a detector that is capable of seeing the wavelengths you want to see.
Yeah. As far as the dark adaptation is concerned, I'm actually very fortunate genetically. An optician looked at my eyes one time and he counted the density of my rods. And he said, my density of my rods in my eyes are 50% higher than the average human being. So I can make out details much easier than most people can. I can walk I felt that when there's no moon, only starlight, I can walk quite easily, no problem.
Yeah, like I say, if you dark adapted, force yourself to dark adapt properly, and it's very seldom that you will need a torch to walk around with. And if you do have to use a torch, don't put it on your head because it illuminates the whole scene and it gives you a flat scene. You can't see height of obstacles in front of you, and you will fall over the bushes like you cannot believe it in the light. Hold it down by your knees. Then you will have a contrast against the background and you will see obstacles much better. And you won't shine the light in somebody else's eye.
And then if anybody's got a contact with ESCOM, please ask them to put load shedding on when it's from 8 p.m. until 2 a.m. at New Moon.
Yeah, like I say, mine is going to come back in the next few minutes. Damn.
Okay, anybody got questions for Johan? I'm sure there are lots.
I was wondering how big, how far away a golf ball must be if you are to see the size of an atom?
Well, the width of a golf ball is 1 arc seconds if the golf ball is situated at 10 kilometers from you. But relating to and you ain't gonna see an atom with a telescope. With a normal optical telescope, because you cannot resolve something that is smaller than the wavelength you are using. An atom is magnitudes smaller than the wavelength of the visual light that we're using in telescopes and microscopes. So to use the atoms, you will need an electron microscope, or to visualize atoms and things like that.
Yeah.
You need to use a frequency or a wavelength that is shorter than the thing that you want to see.
Okay, Chris, I think Chris had a question there. Chris,
yes.
you want to go ahead?
Okay, first, thanks for a good pair of talks. You reminded me of things that I've forgotten about. My suggestion to use an eye patch. So when you're viewing it, you put it on your non-viewing eye, and when you're walking around or examining your notes, then you cover your viewing eye with it. The eyes do sort of talk to one another as far as light adaptation is concerned, but it's not 100% congruent. So you can make it a little bit easier to get your dark adaptation back if you do that. Then about the eye, nature has actually been wonderful, and it's reinvented eyes several times in different ways. And so you see insects and mollusks and human beings have got very different eyes, And this business of having your blood vessels on the front of your eye instead of behind the retinal sensors is, I think, a trade-off, because it makes it easier to maintain the health of the eye. But of course, for our purposes, it's a detractor because it gets in the way of seeing faint things, or if you have very unusual lighting and using a telescope is that, then you can see artifacts that are sort of within your eye rather than the image you want under some conditions. And so the smaller the exit pupil, the more likely it is that you're going to see weird things.
Interesting. Thanks for those useful tips, Chris. Anybody else got questions for Johan?
No, just say thanks. It's a very, very, very interesting talk and very useful. Obviously based on lots of experience. Thanks, Johan. Well done.
Pleasure.
So Johan, you can see it is getting there. This has been a day's work. You won't believe how difficult it is. This thing is so densely packed inside, and I still have to put in the controller for the big LED, but somehow I will have to find space. No. So thank you. What I did is I drilled the 3mm holes a little bit bigger from the ends, and I've put riv nut from inside coming out into the pillar. So then the screw is there. So the pillars are actually very strong because it's mostly riv nut now,
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, good. So thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
All right. Anybody else got questions? Comments? Loud silence. I'm going to say for the moment then, thanks very much, Johan. That was fantastic, and it all went very smoothly this time. I will send you the recording in a day or two when I've got it sorted out.
100%.
Recording.
And Eskom is back here, but it is raining in Pretoria.
Okay. Well, it is your raining season, so that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, no. Well, it has told us this last week or so. It is Bosman, you was measuring rain. How much did we get in the last week or so?
Since the previous rain started about a week ago, we measured up to 5 inches or 132 millimeters in our property. It's quite close to where Johan lives as well. So yeah, it came in gushes, but it's now been a soft rain today. So it's actually feeding the groundwater sources.
So if you want to come and farm, now's the time.
Maybe I can just make one comment
Mm.
on Johan's talk on the eye and the loss of dark adaptation. When you have a bright light shining into your eye, the pupil obviously closes down. It's a protection mechanism to prevent damage to the retina. And that opening in older people like us tends to take much longer than in younger people. I think that's one of the other reasons why we tend to take so long to readapt to the darkness, to the dark skies.
Okay, thanks. We're getting some great tips tonight. Thanks, Bosman.
Yeah. But like I say, if anybody has specific questions and things like that, because I've got methods of even aligning refractors. People say refractors doesn't need collimation, but there's ways of checking the collimation of refractors as well.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, no. Like I say, this is a field that you never stop learning.
Great, thanks very much. Glad it all went smoothly.
Yeah, no, I'm ecstatic. I'm glad I see most of the people stayed on. I haven't put anybody to sleep, it seems. And my power backup system dragged me through
All the
as
way.
always.
All the way. Okay.
But anyway,
Thank you.
thanks everyone, and it was good to play with Hermanus again.
All right, thanks very much. I'm going to shut down the recording now and then shut down the session unless anybody else has got another comment or question.
Hi all.
All right, bye
Hey,
everybody.
Chris.
Thanks for your attendance and thanks for the talk.
Okay, bye-bye.